Did you hear that the godfather of artificial intelligence just quit Google? A British Canadian, Geoffrey Hinton is his name, pioneer of AI. A few days ago, he quit Google because he wanted to be free to speak about the dangers of AI. New York Times interview, listen to this, one line. He says, "Make no mistake, we're on a speeding train, and the concern is that one day it will start building its own tracks." He says that AI is more of a threat to humankind than climate change. I mean, chat boxes, he says, are scary. Like it's amazing how the very people that are producing it are sounding the biggest warnings about it. Now let's back up here. I mean, you and I have had our own experiences with scam phone calls, right? This is the CRA or this is the RCMP and you press this button or you owe this money. I got a call from someone claiming to be my bank the other day. You know, it's the RBC. And we need to ask you a few questions to confirm your identity. I said, hold on. I need to ask you some questions to confirm that you're really my bank. And that was it for that conversation. You know, all right, how do you know? Because it's going to be increasingly difficult to figure out. How do you know if someone's really telling the truth or if it's a fraud? I mean, some dear friends of my wife and myself, they just had their mom talked into, she's a smart, had a professional job, a senior living on her own, but she was just talked into going to an ATM machine and pulling out thousands of dollars for these people. Anyway, it's just sick. You hear about the grandparent scams. I mean, you've had your own story or you know people, and we're told it's going to get worse in the future when it comes to fraud and deception and not trying to figure out what's real and what's artificial. So I've got 3 questions that help me figure out whether something's true or not. All right, here's the first one. Does the source have a proven track record for truth-telling? Do they have a track record for it? You know, when you ever hear someone say, oh, they said, find out who they are. Find out who the source is, for goodness sake. Because, you know, they can say whatever, or they could be quoting from whatever news feed or Twitter source, or who knows where they heard it from. So always check the source. And make sure they have a proven track record. Notice I'm not saying check, are they sincere or are they persuasive or are they loud? Are they convincing? No, it's do they have a proven track record? Second question I ask is this. When I hear something and I'm just trying to weigh, is this true or not? Do I have sufficient facts? All right? Do I have sufficient facts? Listen, all right. Confession time. I was a young pastor, had this woman come to see me about her marriage. I was pastoring in Edmonton, Alberta at the time, and she went on and on about her husband, just a whole laundry list of things that he was just not doing right. And man, I thought, what a creep, you know? And I said, well, is there any chance your husband would come with you? We could talk about this together. She hesitated, but then she said, I'll ask him. And when they came in together and I just let him, know what some of the issues were. By the time I listened to him, I wondered how he stayed married to this woman. Here's a proverb from the Bible that says it the best. It says, in a lawsuit, the first to speak seems right until someone else comes forward and cross-examines, So do I have sufficient facts to make a decision here, to make a conclusion here? And all right, does the source have a proven track record for truth-telling? And do I have sufficient facts? That's one thing I love about Jesus is he was always inviting people to do their due diligence, to check him out. Read the scriptures and see if what it says the Messiah is going to be, if I'm really that person, if I'm measuring up, I'm living up to what for thousands of years, Moses, the books of Moses, and then the prophets, it said who the Messiah would be, what he'd be like, where he'd be born, and what he would do for people. Isaiah 53, ever check that out? Like, who else can be saying that they were a lamb led to the slaughter and gave their life for people as Jesus did? So, I mean, it's there. Do I have sufficient facts? I love that about Jesus, that whatever he claims, it's backed up by the facts. And then the third question I ask is this: not just does the source have a proven track record, do I have sufficient facts, but third, is the agenda pure? Jesus warned that even in church circles, even in the church context, he said, talk about the days before he returns, the last days. He says in Matthew 7:15, beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. Of course, wolves have an agenda. It's to destroy, kill, eat the sheep, and for themselves, get the sheep for themselves. And Jesus is saying, man, they're going to look like sheep. You won't be able to tell the difference between an authentic sheep and a false sheep, but really a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so, but here's the thing. My dad worked for the Canadian Mint in Ottawa. And then when he started working as a policeman with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, he took a fraud prevention course, and especially to do with currency, how to tell whether it was a real Canadian bill or whether it was a fraud, a counterfeit. So he said, we spent a little bit of time looking at examples of counterfeits, but we spent most of the time, he said, studying what was authentic. What to look for if it was really real, if it was authentic. And if that was missing, then you'd know it was counterfeit. But you would look at the authentic. You would study it so well, you knew the authentic so well that it made it easier to spot the fake, spot the one that wasn't real. And it's like that with Jesus, man. You get to know him, and you see he does what he says. Yet you see his track record in your own life, how he does what he says. And his agenda, of course, is pure. I mean, selfless. There's nothing in it for him. Everything's about us, right? He came to earth not because he had to, but for us. He taught us the way to live. It was for our own good. He died for us. He sacrificed his life not because he had to, but because he wanted us to be forgiven and what we had done wrong, for that to be paid for and cleansed away. He rose from the dead for us so we could have eternal life. He's coming again for us. You see, Jesus' agenda is you. Everything he does it for you. And so you can really trust Jesus. And I can promise you, as someone that has followed Jesus for decades, that the better you get to know him, the more you realize how authentic he is. And in a world where there's so much, counterfeit and falsehood and fraud and so many people, falsehood, fake news, you just realize, man, Jesus, I can trust. I can build my life on him. And when I go with what he says, then it's easier for me to recognize falsehood and not get trapped or stuck in that. So follow Jesus. He is the truth.